My name is Sister Santacitta, or Ayya Santacitta, and I'm born in Austria, and I have ordained as nun in 1993 in Amaravati Buddhist monastery in England in the Ajahn Chah tradition. And before that I lived in Thailand for a few years in a monastery of Ajahn Buddhadasa. Then after training in England for about 17 years, I came 2009 here to America, and we established the Aloka Vihara in San Francisco, and since May 2014 we are here in Placerville in the Sierra foothills in the Aloka Vihara forest monastery. We are a training monastery for Bhikkhunis in the forest tradition of the West. We are now kind of collaborating with the Bhikkhunis here in North America. We have, formed what's called the North American Bhikkhuni Association. And I'm also practicing a little bit in the Tibetan tradition. I have a Nyingma Paticca as well. So I practice the Theravada practice, especially early Buddhism, and also Nyingma. It's a place where lay people, men and women, can come, and everything in between can come here, to stay as a guest and join in with us in the daily monastic schedule. But if we are teaching retreats, we go outside. We teach at Spirit Rock, we teach at IMS, we have a yearly New Year's retreat, which we teach in the Angela Center in Santa Rosa and also in other places. But we don't have accommodation for lots of people, so we can't hold retreats here. We can only have guests, like up to 3-4 guests at a time. They take the 8 precepts for the duration of the stay. They're like upasikas, we say. And they are joining in the daily schedule of they get up with us, have morning puja with us, then we have breakfast, then we have a work meeting. After that, everybody does their work. Lay people mainly help with the cooking, maintenance and cleaning and things like that. Then the afternoon is free for individual practice, meditation practice, or walking in nature, studying in the library. And then also they have an opportunity to meet with one of us for spiritual guidance if they wish. And then there's evening puja, and that's just the weekly schedule which they follow, in the same way as we do, but they are not keeping the same, standard of precepts, just the 8 precepts, So a monastery is kind of a place of refuge, I would think, and that it has been very much that for me in the beginning, when I came to the monastery, I had quite a lot of suffering, was quite confused, and was looking for a place which was quiet and where there were people who would live an ethical life, where I could just join in, where I didn't have to create all of that by myself, but I could just serve, and in return I would get access to teachings, and I would be able to join into a routine which was very wholesome, and was supporting looking inwards. And also what was also very good, it didn't require a lot of money. If you go to some of the very prestigious retreat centers, you need to have quite a lot of money to be able to go there, whereas in our tradition it's all on dana basis. It's important that people join in and serve and give of themselves, but it doesn't need to be money. It can be their time, their skills. And then the community life itself is a very important tool for getting to know yourself. How people, if there's a few people together, there's always issues, coming up. And that can be a very good learning ground. That in combination, with the meditation is very potent, really. And that's how we have been taught, years ago in the Ajahn Chah's monastery, and that's what we are bringing also into our monastery here, The community approach, you could say, close with nature also. learning from nature, learning from the community, learning from others, and then bringing it back into your own experience and looking, according to the Buddha's teaching, into your own mind and heart. And then you can't help but learning from that, It's an exchange. So, we wouldn't be able to exist without the support of the lay community. And, and the monastic Sangha over the centuries has preserved the teachings. That's why it's still available after over 2,500 years. It hasn't gotten lost. So, the monastics offer a place for practice, for example, like this monastery here. We offer teachings. We're available, for counseling. We go out to teach retreats and day-longs and evening teachings. We have a lot of material available on our website. So that's what we kind of, put into the equation. And then lay people come here and they help us, by running the monastery. If they stay with us, some people help us through financial donations, via our website, or sometimes they come by and bring some money and put it in our donation box, or they bring cooked food, or bring, just pantry items, or they can look on our website also and see what's needed. That's one of the features of the Theravada school, In the Tibetan school, it's not like that, because if you're a monk and if you disrobe in the Tibetan school, you can't ordain again. Whereas in Theravada, you can ordain up to 7 times, So that's in Thailand just the same. I've seen people ordaining for a day, in order to make some merit for their grandmother or something, yeah. It's a cultural feature which is kind of quite strange, but that's how they are doing it. But also I want to kind of, connect with what you were saying. How well you are practicing has nothing to do if you're in robes or not. It's more like a preference which has probably karmic reasons and so on. It really doesn't say anything about the quality of my practice or the quality of my meditation. You're just having different clothes and a different hairstyle, and you are representing the Sangha, in a quite special way, and there's a responsibility with that. But it doesn't say anything about the quality of my practice, But it helps me, it supports me, because it gives me like a certain framework, I can't stray beyond certain boundaries. That keeps me that supports me. Because it's relatively easy to do it in a monastery, And that's why I chose it, because I felt like I needed some support in order to really rein in my defilements, Because I think I wouldn't have been able, to do that without that support. And then I'm hanging in now for over 20 years, since 93, because it has been very beneficial. And then there was a few points where I was thinking about disrobing, but then somehow I didn't, And now I'm doing this for 23 years, and I've gotten the taste of it now, and I don't think about disrobing anymore. I like it, I think what looked appealing to me, I still remember, it was the meeting my first teacher. His picture is actually here. That's Ajahn Buddhadasa here. Seeing him, his presence was just very inspiring. He had such a cooled out fearlessness about himself, such an equanimity, that I felt, I really would like to be like him. And then the next thing, what I realized was, all of that is really based on good ethics. And my ethics weren't really good, And I felt like in order for me to keep good ethics, I have to remove myself, from the group of people I was associating with for many years. And then I needed to go somewhere else, And then the monastery was the place to go. And then I met good people there, received good teachings, made good connections, And there was just so much opportunities were opening up for me that I knew if I leave that scene again, it would be much more difficult, But it wasn't like always clear. There was a struggle there, you know, because I also have to give up things in order to live in the monastery. So it was an ongoing questioning, you know, it wasn't kind of clear, always clear, you know, clear, not clear, like back and forth, you know, and then now I'm doing it for a very long time. I don't have those questions now anymore, you know, but because I'm almost 60 now, you know, so it's, you know, things change, isn't it? The interests change. Not really, it's just the same pattern, you know, I think. But what is maybe quite a substantial difference is that generally, you know, monks are better supported, I think, you know, because it's quite unusual still, you know, for nuns to have their own monasteries in Buddhism, especially, you know, outside of the Asian countries. And often monks' monasteries belong, you know, to lineages of very famous teachers, and because of that they are well supported, whereas we don't belong, you know, to any contemporary lineage really, other than the Bhikkhuni lineage. So that's now in a revival mode, and I think, you know, we can see that we are getting increasingly better supported. So it's just a question of time, and also a question of our own practice, you know, and what we can bring to the lay people, so that what we have to offer is attractive to them, you know, in the sense that we really bring them something which helps them in their practice and in their lives. But it looks like all our retreats are very well visited, our day-longs as well. So it looks like that people really appreciate what we have to offer. I mean, you know, when you live in a monastery before, you know, some of the nuns who live here and myself, we lived in a mixed community in England, and, you know, and automatically because of the Vinaya, the nuns are always junior to the monks. And, you know, that is a very ancient rule which made quite some sense at the time of the Buddha over 2,500 years ago, you know, when in the kind of Indian societies and even in the Western societies here, I'm sure, you know, women were always, you know, considered, you know, the property of the man, you know, either you belong to your father, belong to your husband, or belong to your son. And that was also like a very important means of protection at that time, because any woman who didn't have a connection with a male was in danger, you know, being raped, really, simply. And you know, nowadays that's not such an issue. Here in the West, for sure, it is not. And what it means for us is, you know, that we can make our own decisions, and that we don't have to defer to the man all the time. And that's great, you know, because I feel like, you know, the daily motions we are going through in terms of running a monastery has also like a big impact onto your practice, you know, because if you're not empowered, you know, in a daily life, then you also don't have the courage in your practice, you know. It's all interconnected, really. I think, for example, you know, Amachi, the Hugging Mother, she's a good role model. Mother Mira, Chetsu Tenzin Palmo, Venerable Pema Chodron, Venerable Thupten Chodron is also a good role model. I think there's renunciation, you know, to kind of let go of the control of several things, and money, you know, is a means, you know, which can open you many doors, you know, and it just doesn't allow you to just on a whim, you know, go out and buy this and buy that. So it's a renunciation and a giving up of control as well. But it's the, you know, Aloka Foundation who supports our what's called the 4 requisites: food, shelter, clothing, and medicine. So there, for us, there's really no need to, you know, go out and buy anything. And if we do need something, then we have Aloka Vihara manager Marina, who is going to do that on behalf of the Aloka Foundation. yeah, it's just more like saying to people, you know, if you would like to contribute, here is the Dana basket. But it's not saying you must put money here in order to go through the door. But it's just like, please come in, you know, and see, join us. And then if you'd like to, if you feel you appreciate what you have received, you might want to give something back. And the IMC has a retreat center which also completely runs on Dana. So it is actually possible, you know. It just needs to have the courage to try, you know. Because we live in a capitalist culture, isn't it? Simply because of that, you know. Because people are not used to it and they don't have the experience, and it's hard to believe. And it is hard to believe, but it does work, yeah. Because it has a powerful, you know, it has a powerful century-long tradition behind it. So it's not just like kind of something we have invented, you know. It has a power to it, and if you trust that, then it will, you know, it will work. It's magic, I think. We have, for example, on our website, you can see, you know, there's a pie chart with all of the money which came in and the money which went out and for what. And it's all accessible to anybody who'd like to see that. But just, you know, coming here and, you know, stepping into the energy of the place. And for most people, they feel very touched, you know, by the silence and the peace which is here. And they mightn't, you know, have maybe a deep meditation, but by just kind of spending time here in that place and sitting with us, it just is like going to the gas station, you know, and tanking some gasoline. Some people just come here and just tank some, I don't know, some good energy, you know. It's very healthy, you know, to be comparing notes and to kind of look into your own tradition and see how things are laid out. And I think it's certainly a good when there are challenges coming, you know, and then we have to look how we are presenting the teachings. I think one of the big influences is like the mindfulness, how is that quickly called? MBSR, mindfulness stress reduction programs, you know. So I think Buddhism has brought something to the culture. And we just have to be careful, you know, that the mindfulness teaching is taken out of Buddhism, you know, and then some of the important points, you know, are forgotten. Like, for example, ethics, you know, is very important. Mindfulness alone is not enough, because you can mindfully, you know, break into a house and take the money and run, you know. But it's also very important to, especially ethics is very important, because if you take the mindfulness just out of the whole context, it's not really mindfulness, you know, it's something else then. Because mindfulness is always based on ethics also. And I think that this is a danger, you know, that only the good bits or like the convenient bits will be picked out, you know, and then are without context just dropped into the capitalist culture and used to function better in that culture, you know. Because the Buddhism and this teaching itself is an anti-statement to the capitalist culture, as I see it, you know. Because it speaks about compassion, and capitalist culture isn't very compassionate, especially the American version of it, as far as I can see. There's no social security for people here, you know. That's just like shocking if you come here as a European person and see how many people are on the street here in San Francisco, you know. They don't have out of their minds, you know. I mean, you know, the Buddhist teaching, one of the ways how the Buddha's teaching is described is also the middle way. I'm sure you've heard that, isn't it? The middle way between, there's the ultimate truth and the conventional truth, and it is a walking, on the razor's edge, where both meet the ultimate and the conventional, and both it's important. It gives a perspective. Being completely caught up in the conventional world, you just become an automatic kind of pilot, running, and making money and doing this and doing that. But then, if you see your conventional life in relationship to the ultimate, then it makes much more sense, and there's space there. It's like having a guiding star. You look up at the guiding star, but at the same time you look down at the ground, so you don't fall, over the obstacles. So we need both, I think. We need both in order to have a meaningful life. You need to inquire, but at the same time you need to live, and to kind of integrate what you learn. If you don't integrate what you learn, what you're learning it for, We are not meditating or studying, in order to become more knowledgeable. That's also one point, but we want to bring benefit, to all sentient beings, including ourselves. That's why we are practicing. I think it's mainly about, helping others if they want to, helping to kind of pierce through the veils of ignorance, really. That's the most important thing. Feeling good is also, you need to feel good to a reasonable way, otherwise you can't even practice, But the feeling good is not the most important thing, because it's changing anyway, But if you have some deep insight, you can take it to your next lifetime. It won't be you, but it's not going to disappear, It's going to be permanent, in the sense that it's really deep insights inform the stream of consciousness. They are not lost. I was trained in a monastery in England where the women didn't have the same opportunities as the men. Women weren't allowed, to take higher ordination, but we had a perpetual novice status, and I've decided to leave that community, not because of women's rights, but for a much bigger reason than that. Even that's also very important, But I could really see, very clearly the connection between the oppression of nature and climate change and the oppression of women, And I just felt I can't support this, because it's not right. And it is downright dangerous for us, to exclude half of humanity from leadership positions, Taking, having the women in a supportive role in the monastery, and looking after the kitchen, cleaning the monastery, providing a lot of services, just like Mother Nature provides lots of services: water, air, food, everything what we have, our clothes, our house, everything is from nature. But then, but there is very little, we are not kind of willing to listen what she has to say, isn't it? We're just dumping things into the atmosphere, dumping things into the waters, and just taking without really listening and without really kind of giving back. And to a certain extent, it was also happening, with the women over the centuries in a patriarchal culture. Women were there, to cook the meals, to clean the house, to have the babies, and the men were always in their kind of, leading positions in the parliaments and in the kingdoms and everywhere, universities. And it has changed, over the last 100 years, but there's still not equality. Not in America, not in Europe, nowhere, basically. It's still, we are still working on that. They can't exist without birth control. Birth control is important. Yeah, sure. I think, the most important factor, I think, which would really support women's rights is, less ignorance in the world, and that the men could see that it is also for their own benefit, If they really cooperate with the women and kind of put the wisdom together, it's beneficial for the men as much as for the women, It's not about the women dominating the men or anything like that. Because that was always the question of the monks, They said, oh, you only want power. It's not about power. It's about sharing of what and equal access to resources so that we can all, fulfill our potential as good as possible. And through that, we can benefit others much more fully. And, and self-confidence is a very important element. And, if one is constantly in a subservient role, forced to be in a subservient role, it's not good for the self-confidence. And then, if you don't have any self-confidence, the way how you approach your practice is without self-confidence. Where do you go with that, So it's all interconnected,